Welcome back, CSC230 W1 to ex4 CSS Practice. This is part 2, and we're going to pick up with actually creating our content for our index page in our ex4 directory. So let's get started with just some basic structure in here, and I'll keep this open. Now, this is my empty page that I was working on for ex4, but obviously it's not going to look like this. It's going to look like this. So we're going to change that. So we're going to change this. So I'll keep this ex4 tab open, and we're going to have a lot of CSS, but I'm going to start putting in some structure in here. And I'll get rid of this thing that I had used here just to put ex4. And what I'll do first is I'll do a header. So I'll type header, and I'll hit tab. And I'm going to hit a return between here so that we can kind of see the opening and closing structure. And this is where our header text will be. And we could just put h1, and inside here, we can put banner heading. We'll just do that for now. It's very generic. That's about it. So that's our header. So that's the first part of our structure. And then the next part of our structure, which will be kind of on the same level, will be something called nav. So we'll do nav and hit tab. And I'll also put a return in there. And then for our nav, we're going to put a unordered list of something that says link 1, link 2, link 3. And let's do that. Remember, it's unordered, so you do UL. And then inside the UL, I could use my arrow or my greater than sign. I'm going to put li, because we need line items, times 4. And then I'm going to put these curly braces, and I'm going to put link 1. And that's it. And I'll click right after it, and I'll hit tab. Let me finish that off. And now I'll hit tab. There we go. If you ever have a problem with the Emmet not working, just backspace and do it again. And you can see what it did. It made an unordered list, the UL, and it made 4 items, line items. We did that times 4. And I'll just change these to be link 2, link 3, and link 4. And it doesn't matter if there's a space in there. It's just text, so you could put a space in there if that looks better. So those are our 4 links. Now, they're not links yet. They're just line items. They're actually an unordered list, so they're a bullet list. So if you run this and you go here and you refresh it, that's what it's going to look like. Banner heading and then 4 bullet things. So it doesn't look like that yet, but that's where we're going with that. So back here. Now, you don't have to work in 2 different browsers. You could just watch the video, or I'll give you a picture of it too. That might help. And then after the nav section, if you remember, I'll go here and take a look at it. We have 2 things. We have a container that's going to contain all this. So that'll help our floats, because we're going to use floats to put these next to each other to start before we get into CSS Grid. So we want to contain it. Floats will work better if we could put them in some kind of container. So we'll have a container, and it'll be a section element, and we'll give it a class name of container. And there's class names and there's ID names. ID names are meant to be used once. Class names could be reused. And it doesn't, in some cases it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to use a class name, and I can put in section. And one shortcut to make a class name, I could put section, and I could put dot container. That means it'll make a class name. If I spell it right, it'll make section element with a class name of container. Now watch how cool this is when I hit my tab key. Look at that. Although it did not, actually that didn't work cool because it didn't use section. It made a div class container. So let's do it the old school way, because it looks like it's automatically using div when you do that. So I'm just going to put section. I'll undo that, and I'll just do section and hit tab. And now inside here, I'll put section on another line, and then in here I'll put class. I guess it's better you learn how to do this anyway. I'll put class equals, and in quotes I'll put container, and that's all you need. So we're identifying this section as a class name container. And then in here, we're going to put 3 columns. So before we do that, let's move on and just finish off this thing here. We have a little copyright in here, and then we'll go back and put our columns in. And then we'll start to use CSS to kind of lay out this whole thing. All the appearance is going to be all CSS. So this will be done with our HTML very soon. So let me go back here. And after section, where we're going to put containers, and by the way, if you ever need to use a comment in HTML, you can put something like columns go here. I'll put columns go here because we don't have them there yet. Columns go here. And if you highlight, you can use the same shortcut. You can use Command question mark, or if you're on Windows, use control question mark after you highlight it, and that's an HTML comment. It starts off with a less than sign, a exclamation point, 2 dashes, and it finishes off with 2 dashes and an arrow. And you could put anything in between there. Matter of fact, a lot of times people put a lot of extra dashes to make them, be bigger dividers. You can go here and do stuff like this where people will make the divider go across the page because it's easier to see. Now we don't need to do that right now because we're just showing how a comment in HTML works. But a comment in HTML looks like this, and a comment in styles looks like that. So I'm going back here to index, and I didn't put my columns in yet. I'm going to put a footer. So after section, I'm going to put a footer. I'll put footer, and that's an HTML element, and I'll hit tab. And then in here, I could put a paragraph. I don't like to just type it loose in there. I like to make it some kind of element, so I'll put a paragraph. And inside the paragraph, I'm going to put ampersand copy, because that makes a copyright symbol. There it is right there. And then I'm going to do a space, and I'm going to put that 2021, and I'll just put my name. I could put my name there, and you could put your name. So we could just do that. And also you can put, the word copyright, depending how it looks. I have to look at others. I always forget what goes first. There's a copyright symbol, and then it says copyright 2021, Richard Homa, or whatever the name is. We'll just put that in the footer. So that's our basic structure other than the columns. And if I go here and refresh, now we have the copyright. So all we need is 3 columns right now. So let's go back here and throw in some columns. Now these could be paragraphs, they could be actually divs, and let me go back and look how I did it. So in here I actually made the columns are divs. Divs are special little sections, so we're going to call them divs, and we can just give them the name column right now, a class name column right now, and then I could use the shortcut here. So I'm going to put, and the reason I'm not doing a paragraph is because there's a header and a paragraph. If you look at the sample again here, there's a header and a paragraph. So the whole thing is going to be a div. So this area is going to be a div with a class name column. And this is going to be a div with a class name column. And the name could be the same for each column right now because they'll have the same properties, but eventually we can give them specific column 1, call 2, call 3 properties if we need to make them different, because we may need to based on the spacing and things like that. So but for now, they're just going to have all the same properties. And I'll go back here and I'll say div space, and I'll put dot call, and I think I could do times 3. I'll make 3 of them. See if that works. You know what? Let me try that again, because I put a space between there, and I don't want to show you the wrong way. Let me try div dot call times 3. See, I shouldn't have done the space in there. Let me try that. Okay, there we have div class equals call. And I'm going to put returns in here so we could kind of work vertically, because we're going to have a bunch of content that goes in here. And we have opening div, closing div, opening div, closing div. And you see they highlight the opening and closing. When you click on the opening, it shows the closing of them. So they're called call. And eventually what we'll do, and actually just do it now, put in call 1 and put in call 2. Even if you don't understand what you're doing, just put it in. That gives it a separate class name, because they can all have the same column class, which may mean, they all have the same font, they may have all the same spacing, something like that. But then column 1, column 2, column 3, this should be 3. If they're different, if there's something different about that column, then we could target that with CSS. So that's the only reason I'm doing that, even if it's confusing right now. So by putting a space in there, it's actually 2 separate class names that we can identify. But again, we're not using them yet, so we're just kind of setting this up. Now, what's going to go in here in each column is going to be an H1. So I'm going to hit return here and make sure that it goes on the next line. And I'll put a H1 tab, and I'll hit return, and then I'll do a P tab, and I'm just going to put column 1. And then in the paragraph, I'm going to do lorem. I'm going to type lorem, and I don't think it matters if you do a capital L. I'll do lorem 30 and hit tab. And there we go. It actually makes a paragraph with 30 words in it. So that's 30, and we could do maybe 30, 30, 20 or something. So I'm going to get rid of the extra space here and do the same thing in the next div. The next div, I'm going to put an H1 tab. I'm going to call it column 2, and then after that, I'm going to put a P and hit tab. And inside that P, I'll put lorem, and I think you could put lipsum too, L-I-P-S-U-M, but I'm going to put lorem, and I'll put 30 as well, and hit tab, and it makes a paragraph with placeholder text, and I'll do one more. And again, I'm going after this tag and hitting return or enter and doing H1 tab, and I'll call this column 3. And then after that H1, I'm going to put a P, and I think you can do P, an arrow, and then do lorem, and let me do like 24. I'll do less, and then I'll hit a tab. And this should actually put our P tag. This will make it quicker so you didn't have to put the P tag first. But you know, if it's more hassle remembering it, then just put the P and then put the lorem inside. Let me see if it works. And that worked. See, it put a P element and it put the lorem ipsum text inside. And I have an extra space here, so I'll just backspace. So now we have some nice structured HTML working here. If you have any extra space in here, you could probably take it out. We don't need extra spaces unless you like the extra spaces. So that's all our structure in here. I think we have everything we need other than using CSS. So that's all the HTML. Let me run this, and that kind of saves it. And I'll go here and I'll refresh, and that's it. This is the HTML structure. We have a heading. We have a bullet list, which are going to be links. And actually, we do have to do that in the HTML. We have to link them. But they're going to be dummy links, meaning they're not going to go anywhere. So we'll just make them appear like links, but they won't really link to anything. So we can do that. And we can do that in the next video. I'll start off doing that in the next video, and then we'll get started with our CSS. So this, again, I believe is part 2 of what we're working on in ex4, and it's our HTML. So we created our HTML structure in here. And what we're going to be doing next is doing a lot of work in our CSS styles and a lot of preview work, making it responsive as we go too. But the first thing we'll do is we'll link these things, which won't be hard to do, and then we'll start targeting all these classes and elements with our CSS to make it look like this. So that'll be coming up in part 3.